Hey, welcome to the Runaways podcast. My name is Cody. We are back from Worlds. Well, at least the two of us are. Most other people are either still traveling back or they decided to stay extra long in Japan. So that's why it's just going to be Dan and myself. But Dan and I are kind of dead. We have not. We were supposed to record this last night, but that was just never happening. I think I just like passed out. It like hit like 6 p.m. and I was like, I'm out. I'm done. I'm sleeping. Um, and then we almost canceled recording this tonight as well because still pretty dead. But we will do our best. But Dan, you and I spent almost the whole time in Japan together. Japan was an awesome experience. Just shortly, what do you think of Japan overall and the whole travel?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Japan is just kind of incredible. We saw Tokyo, a couple different, I guess, towns within Tokyo, and then we spent a little time in Osaka. I didn't see too much of Osaka, but Japan is just like kind of the best. Um, Everything's like so efficient there. People follow rules, which is so nice for me as like a big time rule follower. Um, yeah, I don't know. It was just amazing. Like lots of cool things to see. People were like incredibly polite. I was very happy or like impressed with like how easy to navigate the parts of the country we saw were without knowing much Japanese or like any really just like the keywords. Um, and the food was super cheap and pretty good, so that was nice.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I thought Tokyo was fantastic.
Hmm.
The people on the team know, and maybe some people who listen know, I don't really care about traveling that much. Like for the most part, when I go to tournaments, I just go to play the tournament. I don't really need to sightsee or go do anything. This was the first trip that I went on that I was just like, I just want to spend all my time in Tokyo. What is this tournament? Why else am I here? Uh, it's definitely immediately on my list of I will go back because we did not get to spend enough time in that area. And it wasn't even, I think, for reasons that most people, visit Japan or think of when they're going to visit Japan. I thought the food was fine. The prices were awesome for everything, but just going to these giant cities that are just full of people that all function well and have all of like these interesting shops and like donkeys, which are like department stores there and everything else. Like this stuff was just fun. Like it was just fun to be a part of like this massive giant city that didn't feel nerve wracking or stressful to be in. And you weren't worried about anything. Like I wasn't worried about the people around me. I wasn't worried that something's going to happen. I wasn't worried that I was going to get lost or anything or have to, deal with annoying people. No one bothered you. You just went about your own business. Everyone just went about their own business. It was so nice to just go into a crowd of people and just like not be bothered for anything anywhere. Even when you go into a shop, they don't bother you. It was just great. Like that, it was like that. It was like a different level of, I don't know, maybe freedom is not the right word, but just like, um, just I guess freedom is the best word, right? It's just like a different level of freedom that you're just like part of a group, like a mob that and no one bothers you. It was just great. I loved it. And there's a ton of cool stuff to see as well.
Yeah, Tokyo was really special. I agree. It's like hands down the best city in the world, in my opinion.
Yep.
I haven't seen that many cities, but it's by far the best I've seen.
All the ones I've been to, that is my favorite city.
Yeah, and it's like really not close.
No, everything's walkable. The train was super easy to
Oh, the
navigate around
convenience
with.
stores everywhere. Like
Yeah, convenience stores were
even if you
great.
have a favorite convenience store, it's just as convenient as the closer one. Like, oh, so good.
Yeah. Um, Tokyo is great for traveling to and visiting, and I can't wait to do it again. I hope that they have pro tours there like every year. If they just made that a permanent place that they had pro tours, I would not complain.
That's how I felt 2 days ago. I don't know if the recovery is worth it. We'll see how long it takes.
The recovery's worth it. It'll be fine.
No, I agree. It's pretty bad right now though.
Yeah. I'm just sad that I am all out of my food that I brought with me.
Yeah.
All my 7-Eleven food that I bought for the plane is now gone. A bit sad about that. Okay. So, we're not going to spend, a ton of time on like what we did when we were in Japan, but it was great. It was a ton of fun. I would recommend anyone that's able to go and wants to go to do it. I was very surprised, like you said, about how little Japanese you really need to get around and function. It helps that pointing and bowing and then like not talking is like expected in the society. So if you just do that as well, that's completely fine. There's like no small talk that you have to deal with or anything, which is great. Okay, so on to Worlds, you and I and several other members like Lucas and Charles, etc., Naib, decided to bring Zen. Um, I know that I personally was between two decks. I was going to bring CYB Enigma or I was going to bring Zen. I ultimately decided on Zen. We have gotten a lot of questions about why we brought Zen. I'm sure people who listened, some people figured it out, or most people did. But we were actually at Worlds and we were talking to people at Worlds and we mentioned that we were either playing Zen or brought Zen. Most people were kind of suspicious, was kind of the feeling that I got. It is cool that Zen did end up winning the calling the next day, put a little bit more legitimacy there.
Some
But
good validation.
yeah, good validation. But I did want to spend a lot of time talking about why we brought Zen, what's good about Zen in this current meta that we at least personally feel is being overlooked. We'll also be releasing the deck list and sideboard guide into the Discord for the premium members as well. But Dan, since this is kind of your brainchild, your favorite deck, and I decided to tag along with, why did we bring Zen?
Yeah, let me go through those stories. So like right after the bans, this was it was like 2 weeks before Rosetta released, before we like had all the cards. Lucas just threw up a rough build on Fabry of like what new Zed might look like. And I played it for a few days and it was quite good. It had a little more Tiger Generation than our build. It had like all the Untames, all the Growls. I was like, yeah, this is a good deck. This is fine. But then Rosetta came out and I got addicted to Aurora and no one else was really looking at it. So we kind of dropped it for now. But then like the meta starts to form, right? And you see like what's rising to the top. It's like, these decks are pretty good. I like Aurora a lot, but I just can't ever beat Dio. So I'm like not actually considering this deck. I was like, well, I bet if Zen is good, you can for sure fatigue Dio because this was our plan for Pro Tour Amsterdam. For like the mech matchups. So I had that in the back of my head. And then as the meta finished forming, it was like Viscera is clearly the strongest aggro deck. Or is like more consistent, I'd argue, but not quite as powerful. And then Enigma is obviously like the most popular deck. Like probably not a question that would be the most played. There'll be lots of aggro decks, but they'll like eat up the other aggro decks meta share. And Aurora, I lost to my good friend Michael Fang a couple times when he was playing Enigma and I was Aurora. I was like, I thought this matchup was better than it is. I think I had some bad variance in those games, but it's also like if you kind of break once in that matchup, you fall pretty far behind. Where Zen has like the best comeback mechanic in the game, which is Traverse, which is like Mask of Pouncing Links on steroids. So it's kind of because of the way the meta shaped up. This was like maybe 4 days before Brian called out on the dev talk that he was picking Zen to win Worlds. I could like find the receipt even, but I posted in the chat like I think Zen might just be the play given the meta. And this was without like refining a list. This was like based on playing, I don't know, like 10, 20 games with Lucas's rough draft and then just the meta shape. I was like, this seems so perfect for Zen. Like Zen State goes insane against these decks. And then we just started testing it. I don't know. It was kind of, we started from there. I actually gave up pretty quickly because like compared to Aurora, when you first play Zen, it feels pretty bad. Like the deck is not that good if you just play it like old Zen. You just like kind of dump your damage and slam your hat as soon as you have a good turn. You have to be very like strategic and methodical with the deck now, especially with the way you use equipment, which I believe most people gave up for similar reasons. But yeah, I basically set the deck aside. I was like, I'm just working so hard to do like what Aurora does every turn, while still thinking the meta position was good. But then I think I was talking with like Shane, and he kept playing the deck. He's like, I don't know, I think it's really good. I was like, I don't think so. That's what I said, but in my mind, I kept processing. I was like, no, this just should be the best deck. Like the meta is so good for it. So I dove back in. I don't know who else was working at the time. It might have just been Shane at that moment, but that was maybe like a week of like time not working on it. And then as soon as I started to see like the vision of like, oh, this is just kind of the perfect deck for this meta. I just kept going. Um, I don't remember when anyone else jumped in, but I was actually working with we were talking with Michael Fang a little bit because he also identified Zen as like surely this is like the perfect meta deck. And we were at like this crossroads where we were like we did like 2 or 3 work sessions together, just kind of sharing thoughts on what the deck might look like. Like he had us playing what was the funny card?
Sigil of Cycles.
Sigil of Cycles, yeah, as like a power card, which it didn't pan out, but it was a cool idea. But anyway, we were working together a little bit, just kind of discussing the deck, and we hit this moment, which is like 2.5 weeks before Worlds, where it's like the deck's not quite there yet. It's like we think it should be able to get there if we put in the time and refine the list, because like the unrefined Zen even like was still pretty medium in our testing, and like I was losing ProQuest games against like Enigma still, and some of the decks that you'd expect to be beating consistently, like Aurora. Yeah, basically there was this point where it's like you either full commit and you figure out if Zen is actually the best deck for the meta, or you back out because I mean that's the safe thing to do. Like I think it was pretty high risk for us to lock Zen at that point. It was mostly like conceptual belief that it would work out. Michael ended up parting ways and not working on Zen, which I think is a responsible choice. But I went all in because I like the deck, and the more and more we refined it, the more it kind of just appeared to be like clearly the best deck to attack the meta. Like you're attacking the 4 of the top 5 meta decks, which is like 70+% of the meta.
Yeah, I did want to break
Yep.
that down a little bit more for like people who are listening. I would say so. If we talk about like the best decks, we have Enigma, and currently Zen is favored into Enigma. It is not nearly as good as it used to be.
No, I do think it's the most favored deck into Enigma though.
It might be. I'd have to really think about that.
Maybe like 5 is better. I don't know.
Yeah.
Could be.
But it's favored into Enigma. Most of the time, if the game goes normal, you just win, no matter what. If the game goes tough, and that's like if you don't open chi, if they open, strong, or if you get some of the non-functional hands, which is possible early in that game or in the mid game, you still win most of those games, but you will drop some of them. And then if everything goes terrible, which you can see in my round 13 on stream, you will just lose the game. Your big comeback is a lot harder if you get a huge health deficit than it used to be, and those are typically the games that I lose are when I'm below the Enigma in health. If I'm ever even or going or they're below me, I typically always win. It's like a decent metric for that. But so it is winnable on the other side, but it's favored. Viserai, that's the best aggro deck. I think we're super favored in that matchup. I know internally we have some debates about that, but even you and Yuanji played games after the tournament, and you are still winning without really putting a lot of thought into it. To be fair, but what do you think about Viserai matchup?
No, that's how I felt as well. I didn't really have the time to practice the matchup, sadly. Like I only played like 3 or 4 games of it. I was kind of just trusting you guys in terms of like the plan and whatnot. And I don't know, the games I played at Worlds against Viserai felt really good. There's usually like, I don't know, they usually like check you for chi like twice in the game, and if you have it either time, you're in a good spot. Is how it felt. Like they'll make a big rune chance stack, and if you can stuff that, you just win. And then sometimes they do like face up rebel turns that if you can stuff those, you're also way ahead. But yeah, I don't know. It feels like we're kind of a control deck in the matchup. Like you kind of just play normal and sit there like with your Kasai up and say, I'm gonna make a Zen state if you try to go above rate with rune chance. And like we're able to, I think, push the game pretty long in that matchup if we choose. We play B1 so we can block Arcane and whatnot. And the later the game goes, the more flip chi we have in the deck, so we can make the Zen state without getting juiced by Condemned to Slaughter or any tech like that, right?
Yep. I mean, my experience is like the match goes a couple of different ways. And this is something that you'll probably hear me say a lot when we talk about matchups, because it doesn't work how it used to work with Zen. The games typically go in a couple of different fashions, but with Viserai, the real advantages we have is we can tell them when to stop hitting us. pretty easily with Zen State and with Warmongers. We can severely damage their turn or make it so that they can not kill us, no matter almost what our health total is. They have no way to do that to us, which is also when we're playing that match, we do play it in like a more control mid-range fashion, but we are also an aggro deck who can just be like, here's 15 to 20 damage on this turn. Please deal with this. So, I mean, going second is still like a pretty favorable if you're playing into the normal aggro build. If you're playing into a stack deck, then you probably want to go first. But when you're playing the matchup, you're usually going down similar in health and then they have to just be afraid of Zen State the whole game. Like, what are they going to do? Hold the Revels to do a Revel turn? They might have to if they go down, too low. But then if you just snap Zen State, you break their whole turn, which they just lose the game on the spot. Are they going to block with them? Are they going to take them out of their deck so that they don't even have some of their best cards in their deck in the matchup? We're just like even winning more on that case. If they ever come in slow, or don't like open Mordred Tide, go, like they just get a health deficit because our damage is just as good as theirs is, if not better, when we're doing like chase to tail lines. And so most of the time I find that we go down even, or I get a little bit of a health lead, and they're just afraid of Zen State the whole game. If they put a condemn in their arsenal, we don't care. I'm not. If you have a card in your arsenal for like several turns, I'm not making a Zen State at the end of my turn, and most of the time I'm not going to do that anyway as into the Viscerai matchup. But I'm going to block your first rune chance and attack, and then you're going to condemn afterwards, and you're not going to have an arsenal for half the game. Like that's just like not a real strategy. And I found that the matchups were relatively easy unless I was playing Viscerai internally. That was the only time I ever had a hard Viscerai match. All the other ones, we just have so many avenues to just screw that matchup up for them.
Yep. Even when things go wrong, you can just slam the Zen State and be like, this, it just has to be good enough. I'm going to make this and then draw well.
You can also just block.
Yep.
Like Viscerai already had a problem of like Enigma fatiguing them, or at least dragging it out a million turns. And if we could just block too. We have cards that go in front of cards.
Yeah, you can also just IP your flip G card. Like if it gets to that state where they have a stack, you can just play 3-4 card hands. If you ever get like Sacred Art in Arsenal, you're just kind of free to keep playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
If they ever send the runes, you can just pop them all.
Yeah, for people who don't know, you're gonna do the Sacred Art mode and choose only Transcend as the mode, and then you have a chi on the go. But yeah, I found against normal aggro Viscerai that matchup is heavily favored in the Zen side. So that's Enigma, that's Zen. Aurora, you have a ton more experience with this matchup than I do, but I will also say this matchup is favored not nearly as much as Viscerai is. Probably the most technical matchup in the game, in my opinion, is Zen versus Aurora from the Zen side, on how you navigate turns and how you decide to play with your equipment. But talk a little bit about the Aurora Zen matchup.
Yeah, it's pretty tricky. I don't really have it fully defined. Like the more I play it, the more it kind of changes for me. We have a lot of defensive tools for the matchup, right? Like Wax On is at its best in this matchup or close to it. We have Wax Off to make second Zen State and third Zen State. It's just very dynamic. We typically want to be trading offensively, I'd say, and just using like our 1 D-React for the turn. I don't know. It just plays out in a lot of different ways, right? Like if they get channel down or they present burn up shock, then it kind of changes your decision points quite a bit. Our big thing, right, is that we're playing the Arcane Barrier boots. Maybe gloves are better, I'm not sure, but we're kind of just saying you can never do the sigil of agony? Suffering. Sigil of suffering with channel up thing on our turn because we're just going to pay for it, which proved pretty effective. I don't know. It's kind of a standard aggro matchup until they present some tricky things and you draw your D-Reacts and navigate like how to arsenal correctly. It's a little tricky because at least in the beginning, a lot of ours were playing Command and Conquer, and we're subbing 9 D-Reacts in the matchup?
Yep.
Which can be annoying at times. I don't know. It's kind of like Viscerai, where we have a lot of different ways we can win the game. We can just draw chi and kind of run them over. I think the best way to win the game is always to use your traverse offensively. You will often, in a pinch, block traverse and Kasaya. when they're presenting a really threatening turn and you just want to stuff it with Zen State. But I think ideally you are Zen Stating without using your hat, and then on the next turn you're popping Traverse to close the game.
Yep, I agree. I think there's two different games against Aurora. There's the games where they open Valley, and there's the games where they don't open Valley. When they don't open Valley, I feel like that game is kind of easy. To be fair, you typically get a health lead in that case, and then your whole job is to find the turn to use your equipment, preferably apart. Once you get a health lead, you want to use like your chest and your helmet away from each other. So helmet to push, chest to stop their comeback turns. And then the other games are the games where they open Valley. In those games, typically there's a lot of jockeying for position and effective blocking around that, and then trying to find their turn where they come in short to try and make a recovery spot and pick spots where you can take damage. The game becomes hard when they never let you back in the game. When they like open Valley and they're just like burn them all, go. Next turn they're like arc light, go. Like, they just keep doing it turn after turn. Those are the games that become really difficult because when you're just playing your hands at each other, Aurora's better. But if we use our equipment and our Zen State token, our deck's better. And so it's trying to do those two things. If you use your Zen State token when your opponent is just at like 30, it's not going to be super good for you because they can just block, and you can't threaten the turn after Zen State is gone to win the game, which is kind of one of the goals there. Mm-hmm. But favored overall, right?
Yeah, and I think even more so than the Viscerai matchup, you can just block a bunch. Like if you're not drawing chi, just block, keep blocking until you line up wax on, wax off, and then hopefully by the time you resolve a wax on, wax off, you'll find your first chi and you can start playing the game.
Yep, you have to block until they let you pivot or your deck lets you pivot. Like it's basically how it works if they cut open hot, right? Okay, so that's favored into Enigma, favored into Viscerai, favored into Aurora, and then there's Dash.io. And I think the more we played this matchup, the better I think this match got for us, right? This matchup we play in two different ways. We originally were cutting like all the chi before and then just like pure block out, right? For the most part. And then if they take a turn off, then you do something about it. And that works. It absolutely works. According to Yuanji, it works 44.4% of the time.
With any random deck.
So our deck did it a little bit better than random decks. So we were winning those games probably in like the 50 to 60% range. It's just like we had no control over if we won the game or not. And then I think you and Lucas did some testing and decided to switch it to, hey, let's just run 9 chi in that matchup and let's just punch them in the mouth harder. And then we will fall back on fatigue if we have to. And I think as we started to use that system, because typically they start pretty slow, or they're going to have some turns where they're trying to set up, or they're going to have some turns where they're just hitting you with 2 attacks and there's like no boom grenades on it. And you're just like, I don't care about your 8 damage. Here's my 15 to 20, right? Or even better, they don't block anything. Like this is how most of my IO games go. They're setting up items and they're sending like 2 attacks at me and maybe a pistol. I'm blocking with 2 of my cards and I'm sending 6 damage back at them. They then say no blocks. They take 6 damage. And they do this for a couple of rounds. And then maybe I have a big round after that. And they're all set up, ready to go at this point, right? But they're at like 21 or less at that point. And then you're just like, dude, I can helmet and kill you. Like, if you don't kill me on this turn after you've set up for a couple of rounds, like, my helmet will go off. I will threaten to kill you. And as soon as you start blocking, I win the game. And that is how most of my games have gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think having the ability to chip them down is super important, because then I found that like maybe 30% of the games it would go to a spot where they're at like 20 plus, like just outside of helmet kill range. And basically with their setup, I have to kill them or I'm going to get buried. So yeah, being able to chip them down just like also makes your like Warmonger so much more punishing. Because your deck can actually like, you can transcend and have a full like chase line and end on Warmongers. And then they just took like 18 and they have no turn. Where like otherwise you would have just gone like stick, maybe forego again Warmongers, and now they're not in lethal range. So your Warmongers doesn't really matter that much. They'll just try again next time. But yeah, being able to follow up like your Zen states and your Warmongers with like actual lethal damage, um, I think we just found is like the only way to like reliably win the matchup, other than just kind of hoping that things don't line up for them.
Yep. I will say most of the time it's like I chip them for a couple of rounds. I'm still almost full health because I'm still blocking on those other rounds.
Mhm.
They are like, hey, I have big turn now. I say, hey, I have Zen state now. And then I just like no block the Zen state turn, because it does enough blocking on its own. Then I push back at them and they say, well, no blocks, even with Zen state up most of the time because they can't block. And even if they do block, then I get a whole nother turn to push into them without Zen state up, where they have to say no blocks. And then they're at like 15 at the end of this cycle. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to put my helmet in front of whatever attack you send at me and push my whole hand at you when you're at 15 or less. If you don't kill me here or force cards out of my hand, I win the game. And that happened. That's, the best way I can lay it out for most people at home of how that game operates. So favorite in the Enigma, Viserai, Dio, Aurora. I will also say Florian, which was the 6th most played deck, I believe, or 7th most played deck at Worlds. We found you and I have had the same experience where that matchup has just never felt close.
Like, oh yeah, just like overwhelmingly favored.
It's just overwhelmingly favored for us.
Yeah.
Other people have said that they struggle with it, but
yeah, Zen is like different now, where you want the games to go long, unlike previously. Like the longer the game goes, I think the better Zen is because you're just drawing Chi every turn.
Yep.
We have 3 Cosmic Awakening in our builds, where it's going to 20 you inevitably.
Yep. And then like our deck blocks. So when they're just like felling, you're just like, oh, I'll put a card in the bottom. Here, I'll block for 8. You got no damage. Can you do it again? And like most of the time they can't, right? And if they do, you're like, I block. Like I block some more. Oh, remember all that health you took to get to this spot? You're not getting any health back. Like,
I love blocking in my ninja decks.
Yep. So Florian, definitely favored as well. I think some of the outside games like Azalea is harder-ish than it used to be, but still favored in my mind. I beat a very good Azalea. I beat Vero when we were playing at Worlds, and then I beat Azaleas in testing as well. It was always close. You can
just put 10 foot tall in the deck too if you need.
Yeah, if you really need to, you can definitely do that. So I'd say still favored into the Azalea match. Some people seem to think that Azalea was favored last meta into Zen. That's not true at all. It wasn't even close. Like Azalea was so bad that we decided not to bring it to nationals because it couldn't beat Zen, like, or also Amsterdam. Like it just couldn't win the match. We spent 2 weeks playing it, and it was just like terrible into Zen. That knew what they were doing. Now talk about the problem match. For people following at home, that's all of the top decks we just named. All if you look at the top,
we skipped one.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting to. The top
is that the problem match?
I mean, it's the problem match, right? If you look at the top like 8 most played decks at Worlds, we are favored into them. That's like a dream scenario to be in for CC. But there's one deck that can be a problem. This deck is called New. This deck was terrible for a matchup last season. Just absolutely a god-awful matchup for Zen. It's
post-ban. Yeah. Pre-ban, it was good.
Pre-ban, it was fine. Post-ban, it was not. But it's better now. So, where are we at with this matchup as a Zen player now?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I like, as soon as we like realized that Zen was kind of the truth, I was like, oh man, he's going to be popular. Other people are going to realize Zen is good. People just like knew. Anyway, where are we at? It's a more enjoyable matchup to play now. You don't just like lose every time they cast Weakest Link, because I think in the matchup we're at roughly 35, 36 3 blocks. And then we have 3 4 blocks and 3 5 blocks. Like that's pretty good.
Yep.
That's a lot of block value. So like when things are going wrong, we can just block. And like worst case, they disrupt us, but we only take like 1-2 damage. What else? Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I find it tends to go one of 2 ways. Either they get tempo and they loop you for a while and you're kind of just like fighting to get out of it and hopefully you have enough life at the end, or you just get to open with a transcend turn and it just keeps rolling. So I do find it tends to be pretty one-sided either way. We have like some comeback mechanics to lean on, like wax on, wax off, is very good against them. The most punishing thing when you're like blocking out and passing against new is that they get to swing their weapons profitably and sometimes get 2 to 3 attack actions in there. Whereas Sensei just like blinks those and they can really only do like one big attack typically. Yeah, I don't know. It's still a very tricky matchup. It's more enjoyable to play, but certainly not enjoyable. My like big heuristic for the matchup was just like do what you have to do to resolve your chase lines. They're the only way, or they're the most efficient damage that we present. You can do chase lines off of 3 cards, right? Sometimes 2 with like a biting breeze. So that was kind of my game plan, was just to like fight for those, use those small efficient hands to force them to either take a bunch of damage, like 13 damage or 14 damage, or they block and they're only sending like face up 2 cards usually, which you can then decide if this is the time to slam equipment to pivot or not. My other heuristic that I currently have is I'm just not blocking daggers anymore. Which after saying this publicly, I'm probably going to start blocking daggers. But my plan, if I played new, I didn't play any at Worlds, but I was just not going to block daggers because it's just not worth it. Your equipment's like so important now. And because like the worst punish for like blue daggers like levels into a 6 attack, and our deck blocks so well now, I can just block if this is your punish. Like it's not that big of a deal.
Yep. I would say I currently feel like if I get to go second in the new matchup, I am favored to win the game.
It's a huge deal in this matchup.
Yeah. If I go first, I'm unfavored. That is currently how I feel when I sit down across from new to play.
I think that's just accurate.
Yeah. And so to be favored on either side of the coin against new as Zen feels great. So to be able to sit down at Worlds and our worst matchup, which I don't think that's our worst matchup, by the way. It's just our worst matchups aren't played. Like Verdance is like nearly impossible to win half the time. But that's not a real deck, right? Like that's not at Worlds. I know you don't disagree, but you haven't done a lot of.
Yeah, I don't share that experience at all, but that's okay.
But most of the decks we're favored into, so that's why we brought Zen. It's like I was a little shocked that less people, I guess, figured it out. There were a decent amount of Zens there.
There's still a lot. It was like 45 or something.
Yeah, 40 or so Zens at Worlds. I end up playing a mirror in one of my rounds as well. But when I was talking to people, I think their opinions of Zen were probably from testing against people who weren't playing with the game plans, because there are 2 major issues with the deck now. So all the positive stuff we just said. For Worlds, I felt like every round that I sat down, I was favored, and that's more than you can ask for at Worlds. Like to be able to go to a massive tournament like that, every round you sit down and be like, I am favored to win this round, it doesn't happen very often, right? Like that's just it's not a real world to live in. But that's what Zen does in this matchup, in this meta. But there are, in my opinion, 2 major issues with the deck now. And they are when you don't open with Chi, is like the game is completely different. And that can also be then getting like some of the unfunctional hands, which do happen. When you're playing non-Chi hands, our math is like pretty bad, actually, compared to where other aggro decks are. And then the second main issue is that the deck is completely unforgiving. You must play perfect in order to win with this deck. For the example, if you go back, you can watch my round 13 match I played against Enigma that I ended up losing. But I made a mistake in that game. I held Harmony 1 turn because I wanted to have a 2-card Transcend play that was in my mind. I hadn't transcended yet. The odds of me sending a Chi card in my next hand were incredibly high because of how math works. And I wanted to hold a 0 cost because I knew I was going to have to block, but I still wanted to transcend. So I can block with 2 cards and then I can do a 0 cost transcend. And I get $1 back and I'd have a pretty good line to even threaten a board if they made a board after I blocked. But this is just wrong. I should have just Harmony, played the Harmony on that turn because I had I didn't need to IP it. And that would have dug me like 2 cards deeper into my deck. And who knows, I would have to really go back and try and analyze the tape to figure it out if that makes a difference. But possibly it changes my hand structure when he plays a 10K and then I'm actually able to kill it on the same turn, and that completely changes the entire flow of the game. But because I decided to IP a card to try and set up a 2-card transcend line, I might have cost me a game. That's how unforgiving we're talking about when we talk about how the deck, it doesn't. Some games it's very forgiving when you're just drawing chi every round. It doesn't matter what you do, you pretty much just win. But when you're in that state where the deck hasn't given you chi yet, and the hands are not great when they don't have chi in them, like you have to play so perfectly with everything, that in my mind that is actually one of the negatives of the deck, of what I would say.
Yeah, you feel it the most with Traverse. Like, if you block early with that thing, like, you feel it. Like, this deck can draw a lot of bricks. I mean, it always did. It's no different, but I don't know. My advice if you're playing the deck is just don't block with Traverse ever. Just let it sit there until, like, you have to use it.
Yeah, the biggest thing is when you're having a normal game, the biggest mistakes that I typically see are armor usage is wrong. And it is actually rather difficult, especially when you're playing against Aurora, for example, to decide when to use your chest piece, when to use your helmet. Do you need to use your helmet and chest piece on the same round together? Can you actually play them separate? And what actual turns to do that on? Becomes rather difficult. That's a lot of the. I think most of the mistakes that we were making were just like, I think I transcended too early. I think I used my chest piece too early. And you still win some of those games, but it is much harder to navigate the deck into winning. But it feels like when you lose, it's because you made a mistake. And ultimately, that's why I decided to bring the deck. One, I think if you look at the meta and you say Zen is favored into all these decks, and you don't bring Zen, you're probably not trying to be a professional player or win a tournament. Like, I can understand if you didn't find that, and so you didn't bring Zen, right? But if you did find it and you agree that it beats all of these matchups, you kind of have to bring that deck. It's just like that's too good at a Worlds tournament not to bring. So that's like one of the reasons. But the other one was like when I was playing Enigma, I felt like I was losing my matches due to just how the matchups run. Like I was just unfavored in matchups, and that's why I would lose. Or I can't beat this matchup without completely overhauling the deck, so that was why I would lose. And when I would lose a Zen, I felt like I made a mistake, and I was like way more willing to bring a deck that I felt like if I played perfect, I could win basically every game that I played, than a deck that I'm hoping for good matchups, right?
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I just like the deck, so I was playing it regardless.
Yeah,
I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. So that was ultimately the decision. We did pretty well, especially as a team. I think we had, was it two Zen players in top 32 of Worlds? I think 1 in 64 out of the 5 people who brought it. I think
that's
it was.
right. Yeah, I was told we had a 74% win rate.
Yep, on the Zen
in CC.
Yeah,
and that was a lot of games because there was 5 or 6 of us.
Yeah, I think there were 5 of us on Zen, if I remember correctly. And then that's a lot of games because there's an extra round as well. So it's like 8 games each.
9 games.
9 games. You're right. 9 games each. And 70% win rate at Worlds is insane. And then it also won the calling. So we were definitely not the only ones.
Yeah, I wish there was coverage of the calling. I'm curious what their build looks like.
Yeah, same. But anything else you want to talk about on the Zen side? Hopefully this clears up some of the questions on why we actually bring that deck.
No, nothing comes to mind. The deck's really sweet. Again, you have to be patient with it, and I fully understand why anyone like looked at the deck, tried the deck, thought it would be good for Worlds, and then dropped it. Like it was really not that good when we started working on it.
No, and if you're losing the game, if you're losing with Zen, you're probably doing one of 2 things: you're not blocking enough, or you're using your equipment incorrectly, or both.
Well, I think the build's like super important too. Like, I don't know if you saw like the initial one I was playing at ProQuest. Like that list was terrible. Just the ratios did not make sense. And then I sat down one day and I did the math of like how frequently do I want to draw like these types of hands, being like how many 1 costs per hand, how frequently am I willing to not draw a blue? My math ended up being if you're not playing 29 blues minimum in a matchup, you're making a mistake. I think there's like a slight exception because blues can be negatives in that matchup, but I just found the ratios to be extremely important. Like as soon as I tweaked the ratios, the deck felt like at least twice as strong. And then once we got the game plans down and we learned to stop blocking with our hat right away, the deck feels very good.
Yep. Deck build is definitely sensitive. How you play is sensitive. So like I completely understand why other people came to a different conclusion than we did. I was more just referring to that we came to the conclusion it was favored into basically every deck in the meta that was going to be at Worlds. So I have to bring the deck. I have no choice at that point. Like, I can't respect myself if I'm the type of player to still turn that down.
Yeah, so on going forward with the deck, it is weak to faster decks. We just don't really have those right now. And if they are faster, they're mechanologists, and we can just block, and then their deck goes away. Just keep that in mind. This isn't like the tier 0 end all be all aggro deck going forward. This is just like very well positioned for this current meta. I think it is extremely good into slow decks now, with our block value and like having Cosmic Awakening. It's just like having more deck slots. We cut the broken cards, and now we're just playing these like really good cards. But yeah, if like another aggro deck comes out that's slightly faster than what we have now, Zen might go down a little bit. But it's like it's hard to be that without being a go wide deck. Which like we thought the bad matchups are like brutes, right? So you have to be like
brutes,
big attacks that come at you fast is what I would be concerned with.
Yeah, I mean, if I made a tier list, I'd put it at S tier, but it would probably be a very weak S tier. And it would have been S tier for that tournament. If I'm going to a place that has like a bunch of KOs and other decks, like I'm probably not bringing Zen. I have no interest in playing against KO, to be honest. That matchup is horrendous.
I think KO's fun.
And no, it's absolutely horrendous. Olivia, KO.
It's definitely the most losable of the aggro matchups. I agree.
Yeah. I will just say I think the deck's very good. I don't think it's oppressive. I think all the decks that we mentioned that were favored into, with probably the exception of like Viserai, they can actually win the matchup. I think Viserai is incredibly difficult for Viserai to win that matchup at all, if you play properly. But for everyone else, I think that they still have a lot of game. Like the Aurora match has a lot of game to be played. The Enigmas, they have to do a high roll turn, but if they do a high roll turn, they can absolutely win that game. But with all that said, most of the time, if you play against them as Zen, you will win, but you'll still drop some of those games. Cool. Definitely not over like too oppressive than it was before.
It might feel that way if like the Zen state is particularly punishing to your deck, but I agree. It's like from the Zen side, I feel like I actually like earn my wins. I don't just like find the Artivore and be like, here's all my stuff.
Yeah.
Go next.
True. And to talk about the next topic here, which is another reason why we brought Zen. Zen hard counters, in my opinion, CYB decks. Just absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Almost naturally counters CYB.
I only played one, but I wish I played against them every round.
Yeah, if I played against CYB every round, I would be undefeated at the tournament. Because through the mix of one, we have the talisman in the deck, but that's not really the reason why it counters it. That's just an insurance policy. So we have talisman in the deck. You have your Passover chi to slow them down, which is pretty nice. But also, we just have 3 cosmics, and the way that Zen plays, he just wins the game. Like it takes most of their health to stop your initial power turns, and then eventually you just see the cosmic, and then it doesn't matter if they actually got to use all of their counter blessings or not. They just lose all of their health on cosmic turns. And so it has like a great equalizer in the late game. It has a lot of pressure in the mid game, and then it has tools to just naturally slow down their CYB as well. So if you have a lot of CYB in your area, Zen's great into that. But to talk about that, a CYB Enigma deck did win Worlds. There were actually 2 CYB decks in the top 8 of Worlds. One Michael Hampton played, which was CYB New. The other one was the winner, which ended up being CYB Enigma. And you know what? Vindicated is all I can say. I was right. CYB is great. It's a very, very good deck. I think it's probably too good. I think what a lot of people didn't realize about CYB, and I'm starting to see an uproar, people are finally agreeing, but like we had this conversation like 5 weeks ago about like CYB could be a problem, especially in a tournament format. It's not as bad. CYB is not as bad like in a vacuum. If it's just like, it's a CYB deck, you're going to be facing CYB decks, it's not as bad. It still sometimes is, but in a tournament setting, it is a horrendous deck to have to play against. Because one, you have to put a bunch of tech slots in your deck. We covered this. I'm going to just quickly go over it. You have to put a bunch of tech slots in. But on top of that, you have to try to play within a time frame. And if they don't have time, the game lasts literally forever, as evident by the finals. So CYB, and people are finally starting to figure out this is good. And I think the real issue is because in theory, I can understand why some people would think that these cards are not good. Because in theory, it is a 2-card 6 at once you've casted all of them. In practice, that is not how the games work. Not even close. You never just cast a CYB and a card, a CYB and a card. This is not how this works. You usually open the game and play one of them for free. It's just nothing. It's just a free card that you play at the beginning of the game, either going second or first. It doesn't matter. You usually just get this free card out of your deck, and it costs you no resources. So that's a free CYB. And then you usually play like 2 in one round, one off a tunic. So that's like a free CYB because you played one off your tunic. And then you'll usually have some rounds that have extra cards that you can do with the extra point, whether it's Oasis, whether it's on offense, you just had 2 floating, so you're able to play it because you set it and you waited till you just like had nothing to do with your resources, etc. And so you normally get like 3 to 4 free CYBs during the game, and the other ones you hardcast. And like the math is way better if you're just getting 4 of them for free, not having to use the cards. And I think people just didn't realize that. To be fair, when we were talking about that podcast, it's because I was testing CYB Enigma and I was planning on bringing it to Worlds, but I was like, I still got to talk about how terrible like this deck is for people to play against. Like it's just obnoxious. Like you're just beating Dio with a bunch of no blocks in your deck. You're just like, it doesn't matter. You're just like casting through it. I mean, we saw examples of those sort of things happen. You're just beating people who they just have. There's nothing they can do against you in some of the games. And I'm glad some people have finally caught on. I mean, it took winning Worlds for them to catch on. But I don't know. What are your thoughts now on CYB? I'm assuming they're the same as before.
They really haven't changed. I just think the card's dumb. Like,
yeah,
I don't really want this to be part of the game, but it is, and that's fine, I guess. But
that's why we play. One of the reasons we played Zen. We were hoping to farm some CYBs.
Yeah, no, it makes nice and cozy for Zen, but I don't know. Like the whole tech card thing is the issue, right? Like, one, you're eating sideboard slots, which we're printing like 4 or 5 heroes per event. It's like your slots get taxed more and more. You also don't know when to sell them. Like some of the decks can play them for free, like Zen, like whatever. We have the Talisman of Creation. It's a transcend card. It doesn't block, so like there's big downside, but it still like advances our game plan. And like Poison and Remembrance are like okay in Aurora, like they bounce Gone in a flash, but that's going a little deep. Like they're actual do nothing cards that you have to include. Even like Gravekeeping is like pretty bad. Like most decks are capped on how many like finishers they can support. So like replacing something like a Command and Conquer or Weakest Link with this card that does nothing if they're not playing CIB is pretty bad. So yeah, I don't want to go too deep into it, but like the whole sideboard thing is annoying. It's just annoying. Yeah, maybe if we were open deck list, it would be better, but we're not. I don't know. I still just want to know like why is it here? Like what are we? If the devs have a good defense on why it should be part of the game, like I'm in, but it just feels kind of dumb.
I mean, to be fair, I think most people have either sussed out or assumed or logically jumped to the conclusion that this card was tested before the book banning was decided. And in a world where all those books in Art of War exists, this card is trash. Like absolute just like meme tier status if Art of War and whatnot are still in the game. Sure. Seeing as the books were banned, and that was a decision that was made over a 2-month period, and this set has probably been finished for the last year and a half, it would make sense that they did not expect it to be nearly as powerful as it currently is because they expected Art of War to exist in the game when they initially printed it.
That could be. Yeah, Art of War certainly would dumpster this card.
Yeah, I mean, if Art of War and the books are in the game, like, you're not playing CYB into Prism. Like, Prism's like, I'm doing my thing. You're like, CYB. Like you're not, like, this isn't like a world you're living in, right? Like, the card is like a cool meme off to the side. But you remove all of that, make the match slow enough, it just like outlasts all the aggro decks. But yeah, I don't know. All I have to say is there's like 40 comments on that podcast that I put out shitting on me. And maybe I'll make a video reading some of them because I think that would be funny, and then go a little bit more depth into actually why CYB is good and the actual problems that it causes for how the game functions in a separate video. I don't want to take the whole podcast to do that, but man, you guys all look silly. But that's fine. I knew it the second you guys commented it because I'd been testing it Enigma.
It's like clear who tested the card and who is just guessing.
I'm like at that time when we're doing the podcast, I'm like, I'm considering bringing this deck to Worlds.
Yeah, like, we just finished playing. I was playing Aurora against you. It was like the first time you ever beat me as Aurora is because you played CYB. I was like, oh, I don't like this.
Yeah, it was just like, well, CYB Enigma, here we go.
Yep.
Which is funny because it was kind of made as a meme to be like, I'm sure this probably wins, and then it won, and I was like, this feels kind of good.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, you're just stalling until you get to your chi, and then you can overwhelm with the board. You can play Cosmic if you want to.
Exactly. Cool. Okay, let's get into some podcast questions because I am fading at this point. Still trying to recover from the Japan trip. Okay, these questions are asked by premium members of our Discord. If you'd like to be able to ask questions on the podcast, view our decks that we post in there along with sideboard notes, like the Zen deck that we're going to be putting in there, feel free to join in the link down below. So Sam asks, what are you hoping to see in the BNR next week? Did anything in Japan that you thought is a must-do for anyone visiting in the future? So 2 questions there. What do you want to see banned?
I don't know. As a Zen player, I'm pretty good. I mean, CYB, we talked about enough. I don't really care for this to exist. That would be cool to see go away. I can get down with the sentiment that the block 4D reacts are too good. I think we've mentioned that like vaguely a couple of times. Like at some point, they probably just do need to go. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're fine to ban because you can also just like reprint block 4 D reacts in classes that you think should have them. I don't know. What else? What was the other big one that people are talking about right now? I think I missed one.
High Octane.
Oh, High Octane. That's right. Yeah, I mean, something should change about the way Dash.io operates. We've talked about this like every week. It's just like the weird creature in the corner freaking everybody out, like not playing the same game as us.
Yeah, Dash.io is playing LL format, and we're all like playing standard. And then sometimes the standard deck still beats them because like it's so inconsistent. You're just like, oh, I got there. But for the most part, yeah, High Octane, I'm expecting it banned. I'm not hoping that it's banned. I expect it to be banned on the BNR update.
I agree.
Like 100%.
I think I heard there's like a 20-minute turn in that game. That happens every game. Like that's just how the deck operates now. Like
people are like surprised, like, oh, it's a 20-minute turn. I'm like, you mean every time you play against Dash.io?
Yeah.
Every single time.
Yeah, I don't think we need that, but
no. And they take all the time in a tournament. You're just like sitting there and you're like, dude, I understand that it's complicated, but you can't have all of the time. Like you still got to play, like you're playing this deck. You got to play it at a reasonable pace. You can't like, it's like the same with Kano's. I understand your turn is complicated. I understand there's a lot of things to think about, but you can't have all of the playtime. Like there's a clock. I need some of that time. You can't just have all of it because your turn is long.
Yeah. Was the question what we'd like to be banned or expect?
Yeah, what we'd like.
Oh, I would like Siren's Call to be banned.
That card is absolutely gross. Okay. I think High Octane, I expect High Octane to be banned. I want CYB banned. I personally enjoy playing CYB actually. Like that's the hard part about it. Like I enjoy playing the deck. Like when I'm playing the deck, I'm like, this is so fun. In my pillow fortress, gaining all my health. But the deck is horrendous for tournament play and it's horrendous for streaming. And it just like, it doesn't feel like Flesh and Blood. It doesn't feel remotely close to Flesh and Blood when you're playing.
Agreed.
For people on either side. So yeah, I would hope CYB is banned. I don't expect them to ban it, but it would be very nice if they did.
I don't know. I haven't seen the coverage yet. So I don't know what it actually look like on the camera. But I think if it looks bad enough on the coverage, they'll kill it off.
Yeah. I will say, for a tournament that had a lot of great games, the finals game was a big letdown, mainly because CYB existed. Okay. And then, was there anything in Japan that we thought people must do for visiting there? Yeah, go to Tokyo. It's just go everywhere in Tokyo.
We didn't even have much of an itinerary. We kind of just like follow chain to towns and cities.
We just go to.
I don't know
we just jump on the train.
Sections of Tokyo.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, just went on the train like you were saying. Just like
Just
went to random spots.
jump on the train, go to one of the areas, explore the area, jump on train, go back to hotel, and do that for the first 3 days. Like, and that was great. Just do
Yeah,
that.
just kind of do all the things. Eat the convenience store food. It's real good.
Yeah, yeah. Get a Suica card. That's great.
Oh yeah.
Um, Next question here, very much in a similar vein, says, in addition to what you hope to see in the BNR, what do you expect to see in the BNR? And this is from Bo Frunkel.
Yeah, High Octane seems likely.
I think that's
When's the
I
BNR?
think
Is it this week?
the 11th.
Okay. Yeah, they're not going to ban Sync Below this week. There's like no way.
No.
They would do that like on the next one after like thinking about it a lot. And that'd probably be like a bulk banning again.
Yeah.
Yep. I think it'll be High Octane and probably CYB.
I think it'll only be high octane, but I'm hoping that they just get ahead of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even really getting ahead. It won Worlds. Like it's done the
Yep.
thing. Like, and that should follow the MO. People got to play CYB. They got to do the thing. Now, please ban it so we don't have to deal with it anymore. They like letting people do the thing the first time.
Yep.
And then banning it. We've done it. So let's ban.
Oh wait,
CYB.
we're getting 5 support next set, so I expect them to ban like Lava Burst or something for no reason. Or like Shuko.
Or
I don't know.
Shuko. Okay. Next question from Kraft is, what was the most interesting build you saw at Worlds? None of them were interesting. They were all exactly what I
Yeah,
expected.
I'm not
them to
remembering
be.
super. I played against like every version of Enigma you could play against because I played 5 of them somehow. They like all presented different equipment, but I don't know. Everything was pretty standard that I saw.
Yep. Everything I played against is what I expected to play against. Fighting Walloon asks that he thought the Robcan versus Gregor's game in Top Cut was very exciting. Do we agree? Is essentially the answer. I know you haven't watched that match yet.
I have some things to share. If
Okay.
you don't.
Go ahead.
So I actually talked to Rob shortly before this match. I was just walking around the hall and there was like 10 people total in there. So I was talking with him and Michael Hamilton briefly. But I was talking to Rob about the matchup because like I really like Aurora and I was playing it a lot. And he told me about his lack of tech cards for CYB. I was like, huh, that's not good. So he like, talks about the different combos he could try and stack and that kind of thing. In my head, I'm just like, there's just no way like you can win this without tech. You just need like one piece of tech, and I think you're like favored.
He was
in my
on
mind,
it
it's
too.
like, you just can't do this.
He knew the tech. He knew the tech that I've only ever heard you mention, by the way.
Remembrance?
Yeah.
Oh, weird. We can talk about that next because that's just foolish. That's so obvious, I think. But anyway, he was like hopeful still. So I was like not telling him that this is hopeless, obviously.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch the game fully yet, but I was in line to meet James White at the time, so I was like watching clips of the game on mute, and it looked like he got it like really close. So like from what I saw from the game, it was pretty impressive. It looked like he almost fatigued the Enigma, if I saw correctly. So I'm excited to watch that game, and from what I could tell, it was exciting, but I didn't watch from start to finish. So check in next week, maybe.
Yeah, I haven't watched that game yet either. It is on my to-do list, but honestly, I'm a little tired to like analyze a game, so I'm kind of waiting until I have like a little bit more energy to do that. But no, when we did Fino did an interview with him and his deck, and I was the cameraman, and he was talking about if he had remembrance, he like auto wins the matchup, but they didn't tech a remembrance in, and they cut their CYB stuff. They're just hoping to dodge it basically, or it wouldn't exist in the top cut, which is kind of what a lot of people was hoping for, and they got. So, but he did mention the remembrance, which I have not heard other people mention.
Yeah, it just makes sense, right? Like poison or cremation or whatever you run, it's usually like a 20-point card where remembrance you can. He was saying he just gets 3 strikes because he's planning to fatigue them, so he just gets 21 damage.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense if they're on Amulet of Echoes, maybe just never do a 3-card combo. But I would just get back like Arc Lightning, Flicker Wisp, and it's like a 34 damage turn you're getting from one card. Like that's kind of nuts.
Yeah. Okay. Ham asks, what is your FAB hot take?
Hot take?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm too tired for hot takes. Let me think. I don't know. I think us saying repeatedly that Zen is by far the best deck is a hot take.
Yeah. To other people, not to me. I
For
think
us,
it's
it's
like
like the
obvious.
coldest of takes.
Yeah.
Fab hot take. I think the player of the year thing is looking a little
Suspicious.
not the best.
Yeah.
But cool that they have that, I guess. I don't know. Because they said it takes away from the total prize pool, so it's not even additional.
Wait. It's not additional.
No, if I heard correctly, it's from the 1.5 million pool. It's only 100K, but like
So we're just getting less tournaments then.
I don't know.
Weird. I don't know. It to me it feels like they're just making an award to give Brody next year, and that seems weird to me. So
yeah, I mean, Brody probably deserves an award for how many events he does and how well he does, but
I think
to
his
design a new one
his
is a little.
I think his prizes and gold foils and PTIs that he gets are his rewards.
I don't know. I understand
and
like
the notoriety and being invited to
recognize that kind of.
he was invited to stuff. They're making a card that
yeah, it doesn't have to be celebration and player of the year.
Yeah.
But I think having one is fair.
I think Brody's great, and his ability and dedication to travel to everything is awesome. It's just like there's like 4 people in the world that compete for this thing that
that's the only issue, right? It's just that they released the points. I don't know if you saw that. We just got those tonight.
I haven't checked them yet.
Top 3 per region get awarded. There's a point system based on placements.
Yeah.
But it just feels like if I win 2 Pro Tours and a calling, maybe I can get third. Like,
yeah. I'll have to go check the numbers and see what they actually look like spread out. But currently it feels like one of those things that only a couple of people are actually able to compete for, and it's exciting for them. But like for the general public, even if you travel to all the events, it's just like, eh.
Yeah. I wish it was like top 10 or top 20, because then you at least incentivize people to like attempt the grind. Like if it's top 3, it's just like, why would you bother?
Yeah. Okay. Cusco asks, what was your favorite thing that happened during the trip, pre or post Worlds? And will Zen list be made available? Yes, it'll be made available for the members of the Discord. So what is
favorite thing was for sure the first class seats on the bullet train.
That was
not
great.
Close.
So weird.
It was like after the tournament on our way to our flight home, and they were just like the coziest chairs ever. You had a nice window view, got to see like some mountain sights in Japan, and just laid back for 2.5 hours and didn't talk to each other. It's perfect.
I don't know. I was a very big fan of just waking up at like 7:30 and walking over to 7-Eleven to have first breakfast. That was great. Like it was just peaceful. No one bothered you. It was all quiet. You just boo, get some food that tastes good. Go back, have a little bit, have a coffee and a snack, and then go have real breakfast.
Yeah, it was such a different vibe. Like the first few days in Tokyo were like what you're describing, just like chill, kind of vibing, seeing some stuff. A little physically exhausting because we walked a ton, but very chill. And then the tournament was just like go. Talk to this person. Get ready for this match.
Okay, last question here from Millen asks, what is your opinion about releasing a new hero with talent class when we already have one that is not relevant?
Is that Syndra?
Yeah, I think it's referring to
no.
Draconic
Ninja.
Ninja.
Not relevant? What do you mean? He has the most LL points. I don't know if it's Syndra. Like, surely that makes sense. Like, Zen's actually at like 900 points. He's going to LL soon.
Yeah.
I think he's the type of hero that with like any support, he should go over the top. Unless Ice came back to the game for some reason. That could change things.
They said that they
wouldn't do that.
They said they're not going to put Ice out until they have an interesting mechanic to play with Ice. That is something that they said before.
Oh, so you think we're getting more like thaw effects?
I don't know. I was actually being facetious because they just released Ice again with the same effect. So
yeah, that's what I was saying. Surely they unbanned a little, but I mean, maybe they do in this set. Like, hopefully we get like a draconic equipment with thaw effects.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this one actually makes a lot of sense because, like you mentioned, Fi is with any real tournament wins, we'll just walk out the door and we'll never see him again.
At least like the Fi gamers can like enjoy this like powered up version that I'm expecting us to have for a couple weeks.
Yep. I mean, if I knew what Vincent would look like when Chain was still around, I would have done everything in my power to make sure no one won any games with Chain ever again. I'd have gone to the finals and just slapped slapped it off the table. Be like, no points. I need this. Everyone scoop at second in all of your tournaments, or we're going to lose this hero forever. So
yeah, I don't know. I don't see any issue.
No, not a big deal to me. Cool. Well, ultimately, I thought Worlds was great. Had a lot of fun. Japan was great. Can't wait to go back. A little bit tired, so running out of things to talk about. There's plenty to still talk about Worlds, what happened, how all the decks did, the breakdown, everything else. We will definitely be doing much more of that next week, especially when we have more of the team back. Some people are definitely still in Japan. Try and get Noah on since he did top 8 with Viserai for sure.
Can we thank the people really quick before we sign off?
Yeah, absolutely.
There was like so many people on this trip that like came up to us about the podcast or just like any of our content or just say hi. So that's always greatly appreciated. As always, I especially appreciate the people who let me know that my FI content was like what got them started in Classic Constructed or playing Flesh and Blood. Like that always means a lot. I don't know why, but that validates me more than like performing well at majors. Like just knowing that I like helped kickstart someone's Flesh and Blood experience or got them interested is really cool. So thank you.
Yep. I'd like to say the same. Thanks for coming up, chatting. Even if it was just to say that you watch the podcast or like the podcast, all of that is great. But yeah, I love hearing that people like the stuff that we do and the time that we put in, and hopefully it is at least a little bit entertaining. But from that, I'm going to go now. I'm going to go play some more to the Bazaar because I'm kind of addicted to the Bazaar now. So goodbye, everybody.
Yeah, we're getting rid of the envelope here, but
What we could do here is go ahead and play the envelope.
All 3 pitches of Envelope and Darkness.